Have you ever stared at your phone, rereading their last message, wondering how someone who once held you so close could now feel so far away? They act indifferent, cold, detached, and yet something doesn't quite add up, does it? A glance they gave, the way they still follow you online, the random check-in just when you're starting to move on. Hi, I'm Jim Rohn, and if you're here, chances are you've been questioning everything. Not just what happened, but what's still there underneath the silence. Because here's what most people don't realize. Avoidance may retreat, but that doesn't mean the feelings vanish. It means they're hidden, behind defense mechanisms, behind fear, behind silence. And today, I'm going to help you read between those lines. In this video, we're going to unpack the subtle signals that your avoidant ex still cares, even if they're doing everything they can to pretend they don't. You'll learn the emotional tells that most people overlook, the psychology behind why they withdraw just when things get close, and how to stop internalizing their distance as a reflection of your worth. And here's the best part. By the end of this, you won't just be decoding their behavior, you'll be standing firmer in your own, because clarity isn't just about understanding them. It's about coming home to yourself. If that's the insight you've been needing, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future video like this. And if anything in today's message hits home, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your story and help guide you through it. Let's get started, because sometimes the coldest silence hides the loudest feelings. One of the most disorienting experiences after breaking up with an avoidant partner is how cold they seem, almost overnight. It leaves you questioning everything. Did they ever care? Were those late-night talks, the way they held me, the things they said, was any of it real? And that emotional whiplash is exactly what makes breakups with avoidance feel so uniquely painful. It's not just the loss of the relationship, it's the erasure of it. Or at least, that's what it looks like on the surface. But here's the truth. Emotional detachment doesn't always mean emotional absence. Avoidants often rely on emotional shutdown as a coping mechanism. It's how they regulate overwhelm. When emotions get too close, too intense, they default to distancing, not because they didn't feel something, but because they don't know how to stay present with those feelings safely. So when they pull away or seem indifferent after a breakup, it's usually not a sign that they're over it. It's a sign that they're overwhelmed by it. This is someone who has likely never been taught how to sit with vulnerability. So they armor up. They cut off contact. They appear fine. But that silence, that avoidance, it often masks a storm they haven't yet figured out how to face. Understanding this doesn't mean you should chase them or excuse emotional unavailability. But it does give you context. It helps you stop internalizing their distance as your failure. Sometimes their calm exterior is not strength, it's protection. And knowing that is the first step toward healing with clarity, not confusion. One of the most misunderstood parts of breaking up with an avoidant is assuming that their silence means they've stopped caring. But if you've ever caught them watching your Instagram story within seconds, or noticed they haven't unfollowed you, or that they still keep tabs on your life in quiet, passive ways, it's not an accident. These subtle behaviors, while easy to dismiss, often point to something deeper. Avoidants struggle with emotional exposure, so while they may not reach out directly or express longing in the way you might expect, they often find indirect ways to stay connected. Checking your social media, holding on to old photos, or even reaching out casually weeks or months later, these are often quiet bids for closeness without the risk of vulnerability. It's their way of asking, "Are you still there?" without having to actually say it. They might bring up inside jokes in unrelated conversations, or accidentally bump into you in a place they know you frequent. They might even send you a random message out of the blue, something that seems harmless like a meme or a song link, but that's not really about the meme. It's about opening a door just wide enough to see if you'll walk through it. And while these actions can stir hope, they aren't always signs of true readiness. They're signs of emotional attachment, yes, but not necessarily commitment or change. That's the difference a securely attached person learns to see. It's not just do they still care, but are they showing up in a way that matches what I need? Understanding this can help you observe without fantasizing and discern interest from true investment. One of the most revealing signs that your avoidant ex still cares is their unexpected emotional reaction when they see you moving on. And no, this doesn't always look like jealousy or begging you back. It's often much subtler than that. Sometimes it's irritation, sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's a backhanded comment or a joke that stings just a little too much to be casual. You see, avoidants often struggle with their own internal contradiction. They want closeness, but they fear it. They miss you, but they fear losing themselves in the connection. So what happens when they see you reclaiming your peace, your glow, or worse, your joy with someone else? It disrupts the illusion that they had more time, that they could come back when they were ready and you'd still be there. One of my coaching clients told me, I thought he didn't care at all after the breakup, but the moment I posted a photo with someone new, he suddenly messaged me, saying, "Didn't take you long, huh?" That's not indifference. That's a hidden protest, a flare of emotion from someone who's still tracking your moves, even if they won't admit it. But here's the key. Just because they care doesn't mean they're ready. Their reaction isn't about love. It's about control. It's about comfort. It's about the pain of watching someone slip away from the narrative they thought they could manage. Most avoidants aren't used to losing someone who finally stops chasing. And when you shift the dynamic, when you stop proving your worth and start living it, that's when they feel it the most. They might reappear subtly, a like, a reply to your story, a casual "how have you been?" But again, presence doesn't mean progress. If you're doing the work to heal and grow, then their moment of discomfort shouldn't pull you off your path. Let their emotional reactivity be confirmation, not of their readiness, but of your power. You're not cold for protecting your peace. You're not heartless for creating distance. You're finally showing yourself the consistency you always wanted from them. That's the irony. When you stop waiting, they start noticing, and when they start noticing, you'll already be on your way to someone who doesn't have to lose you to see your value. Another powerful sign your avoidant ex still cares, though they'll never say it out loud, is their need to keep the door open just enough to feel like they haven't truly lost you. This isn't always direct. In fact, it usually shows up in the most confusing ways: vague texts, delayed responses, breadcrumbing behavior, or surface-level check-ins that carry emotional undercurrents but zero commitment. They might not be saying "I miss you" outright, but they're making sure you still miss them. This is where many people with anxious attachment get rehooked, because when an avoidant ex sends a "hope you're doing okay" out of nowhere, it's easy to interpret that as a turning point, a sign they're finally ready to change. But here's the truth. What they're often doing isn't reconnecting, it's regulating. Their emotional state, not yours. They might feel a pang of guilt, a moment of regret, a sudden wave of loneliness when they remember the safety you once gave them. And in that moment, a message is sent. Not because they're prepared to show up differently, but because they want a hit of reassurance. They want to know the line is still open, that they still matter in your world even if they chose to step out of it. One of the most important lessons you'll ever learn in healing from a relationship with an avoidant is this: mixed signals are not intimacy. Just because someone reaches out doesn't mean they're reaching toward you. Real intimacy requires vulnerability. It demands action. It's not found in late-night texts that say "just thinking of you" without follow-up. It's found in consistency, effort, and truth, even when it's hard. So if you're seeing this breadcrumb behavior, I want you to pause and ask yourself, do I want presence or do I want partnership? Because presence without commitment is confusion, and when someone keeps resurfacing without real clarity, it often says more about their fear of letting go than their readiness to love you fully. What they're doing essentially is managing the loss on their terms, trying to soften the silence, to keep a piece of you in their back pocket without having to step up and truly rebuild. That's not love, that's emotional insurance. The most powerful response to this: don't bite the bait. Respond only to consistency. Respect their feelings, but prioritize your peace. Let them feel the weight of your absence, not as a punishment, but as a reflection of your boundary. Because when you stop reacting to inconsistency, you stop rewarding emotional laziness. And that's when they're faced with a choice: grow up or let go. Either way, you win. Because now, you're no longer waiting to be chosen. You're already choosing yourself. Here is the continuation, part 5 of the video script for the hidden signs your avoidant ex still cares, even if they seem cold. Written in the style of a psychological coach like Chris Sider, 600 words in length. So let's zoom in on what often gets overlooked, those subtle but revealing behaviors that scream, "I still care," even if your avoidant ex would never admit it out loud. When an avoidant person distances themselves after a breakup, it's tempting to believe they've shut the door completely. They may not reach out, may not express remorse, and may seem to vanish into silence. But remember this: their avoidance doesn't cancel emotion, it conceals it. Many avoidants show care in passive or indirect ways. It might be checking your Instagram stories but never liking a post. Or they might ask mutual friends about you not because they're casually curious, but because they can't bring themselves to contact you directly. These soft stalks, as I call them, are signs they're still emotionally tethered. They just don't know how to process that attachment without feeling exposed or out of control. Another hidden sign: jealousy masked as indifference. If you're thriving, socializing, maybe even dating again, and you suddenly get a cryptic message from them about something random, like, "Hey, I think you still have my charger." Know this: it's rarely about the charger. It's a subtle scan. They're checking if the door is still open. Your progress threatens their illusion that they've moved on, and that can trigger fear of replacement. Here's the thing: avoidants often struggle with self-worth more than they let on. When they see you healing, evolving, smiling again, it confronts their hidden fear. What if I was the problem? And though they won't say it, the idealized version of the relationship often plays in their head on repeat. Nostalgia hits hard, not because they suddenly realize everything they lost, but because it's safer to long for a past version of intimacy than to risk rebuilding a new one. That's why many avoidant exes reappear in cautious, non-committal ways. They're not testing you, they're testing the waters of emotional safety. Now, here's the critical point. Just because they still care doesn't mean they're ready to love you the way you deserve. Caring is not the same as committing. Emotional conflict within avoidance is real. They want closeness but fear the cost of it. And if you confuse emotional breadcrumbs for renewed connection, you'll find yourself back in the loop, over-investing in a relationship that still lacks reciprocity. So what can you do? First, stay grounded. Don't assign meaning to half efforts. If they reach out, great, but measure their actions, not their intent. Second, honor your progress. You're not who you were when they left. You've grown. You've confronted pain head on. Don't shrink back into an old version of yourself just to fit a connection that still hasn't evolved. And lastly, remember, their silence, their distance, even their awkward reappearances, none of it defines your worth. You get to decide what kind of love you want and who gets access to your emotional world. And if someone wants to be a part of it again, they'll need to do more than show signs. They'll need to show up. Here's something I want you to hear clearly. Just because your avoidant ex still cares doesn't mean it's your job to fix the relationship. That's a trap many fall into. The moment they sense an ounce of emotion, they spring into action. You start texting more. You overthink every word. You try to prove how safe and loving you are, hoping they'll come back fully. But here's the truth. If you have to perform for closeness, it's not connection. It's self-abandonment. Avoidants don't respond well to pressure, but they do notice presence. Not the kind that chases, but the kind that respects itself. One of the most powerful signs that you are healing is this. You no longer try to decode every signal. You feel the urge to analyze, to reach out, to rescue, and then you breathe. You observe it. and you don't act on it. That's growth, because their care isn't the real test. The real test is whether they're willing to lean into change, to initiate, to apologize, to make space for your needs, not just their comfort. That's what tells you if this is a reconnection or just another repeat of the emotional loop. So ask yourself, are they coming closer or are they circling? If it's the latter, remember, circles go nowhere, and you didn't come this far to run in place. If you've made it this far, I want to leave you with this. Caring doesn't always come wrapped in the language we want to hear, especially when it comes from someone with an avoidant attachment style. Their signals are subtle, often hidden beneath a surface of silence or indifference. But caring alone is not the same as showing up for a relationship, and that distinction is everything. What you've learned today is that yes, your avoidant ex may still care, but that doesn't automatically mean they're ready. The deeper work is about you reclaiming your power. It's about noticing the difference between hope and evidence, between chemistry and consistency. It's about honoring your growth, your needs, and your right to a love that meets you in the middle, not one that keeps you guessing from the sidelines. So if you find yourself standing at that emotional crossroads, unsure whether to stay open or step away, ask yourself, does their behavior reflect real change or just familiar chaos? Because clarity is not cruelty, and choosing yourself isn't giving up, it's growing up. Thank you for being here and for doing the courageous work of healing with integrity. If this video spoke to you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share what resonated most. And if you're on your own journey of breaking free from anxious-avoidant patterns, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're building a community where secure love isn't just possible, it's the new standard. Take care of your heart and keep going. You're worth the connection that doesn't make you chase it.